Should be sentenced to them the case. Good to go? No.
We haven't gotten the 1 and C yet.
Gotcha.
I just received it.
Okay, cool. In that case, everyone good? No, Julian not good. All right.
My internet seems to be a little slow at the moment. Here in the
All good.
hotel.
Okay. All good now? All right, sweet. Topple affirmative advocated policy whereby the United States federal government expands the scope of one or more of its core entrance laws. Result means to enact by all policy by law, words of phrase 64, resolved by legislature established by law. The United States federal government is the national government in DC plus all. The four federal government, national government, exercise control over small units, U.S. government should means mandating something be done. The other nine should exercise the weight of authority, could upheld extension of the Arizona court should convey duty obligation, prohibitions of laws forbidding something, calls to donate, the prohibition of law forbidding something, the core entrance laws of the Sherman Clayton FTC Act, Psalm 70, the FTC Act 1 to 3, core federal entrance laws together with Sherman Clayton. Debate is again whether here to win. 2, impacts 1, fairness, the negative, biggest preparation for predictable reading of the resolution, absent limitations on advocacy, the affirmative, the structural advantages, thinking, recontextualize their case, provide alternative competitive incentive, discourage the from providing the negative options that fall within the predetermined preparation, preserving an equitable chance of victory between the abs and negatives. All teams that always necessary receive their office because debate is inherently bounded by competitive incentives. The judge must pick a winner and loser and force speech time. Consider drop arguments is true because the conditions of the debate abilities are prerequisites to evaluation of the content of debate. Procedural questions like team proceeds something once, and the ballot should who did the better rating of the resolution question. Second, clash. Resolution debates focus on specific points of disagreement, which encourages team to develop. Third and fourth line responses to argument. This strategic process has significant pedagogical the value in training us to think through the other side's argument, prevents the problematization of solutions, the actualization of debates benefit, the repressive hypothesis K, the reduction of race to the binary of enslaved black female fashion, the white rivals, the master narrative produced by the retroactive reading of the 19th century biological racism as an inescapable trans-historical force. Chapter 21, the president of the East and West, the discourse rather than ontological is knowledge is proven adaptable in the case of the transatlantic stage of the European empire, really given molded the understanding of rape in the global post-colonial context. Too often race has been treated only as something of slavery, and then emphasis that its preference reinforced the belief that race is primarily about practice in debates, race understood in terms of deterministic mold rather than probabilistic molecular classification of the reification of race. These anti-correcting terms and important contribution if it goes aligned, if it goes the analytics our sites historical website divergent historical events that align with the controversies of race generated the Anglo-American Academy City or halting contingent events in the continuous master narrative. The repressive hypothesis is the motive that governs the regime of romantic notion of blackness as a force necessarily disobedient to power, reifying blackness is devoid, repressed by white nationalists, normalizes the multifaceted power relationship play in any construction of race. Chapter 21 post-political study residents who newly with the populace Freudian paradigm of repression race is equated to depression by anatomy, intractability, naturalized psychoanalytic cortex repression of function is the motor of entire regime of thought, rendering ourselves to self as the minor state of imprisonment and liberation. This is what Foucault intended by the faith of repressive hypothesis. Foucault is not interested in asking how we are repressed, but how we come to believe that we are not. Foucault's critique of the repressive hypothesis being instructive for thinking about race. Consider Fanon, whose work speaks to psychic repression and Fanon's description of race seems symptomatic of the repressive logic of the characteristic paternalistic functioning of power. Race heralds a perpetually internalized state of negation. Racism is not an end in itself that indicates the satisfaction of repressed libido desires. Race marks productive techniques of power to shape the species. Show Chapter 21 to consider Foucault's relevance in race. So it would be necessary to see the critical commentaries on left century history. This will to know seems to develop into computational motives by biological social racism is a racism that is permanently ceaselessly being recreated in and by the social fabric historical question of life species rather than individual seem most primarily determines part and parcel of the regime of growth rather than understanding tensions and antagonism derived from color and location. Foucault describes the relation to power racism as a means to an end rather than an end in itself, whereas our current understanding of race and tendencies psychically as prejudice and hatred is a mutual contempt. Racism is not pathology, it is regulatory capacity. Far more critical is the question of what institutional purposes active racial systems serve to norm biopolitical rationalities and policing underlie a global race war. Chapter 21 that police emerges to code many the reason of the state of new perspective conceived of the same institution of providence preventive in short rather than future of the master slave colonizer colonies the various because analysis workers under the type of shepherd chief priest consensus police citizen absence of monarchy and logic of trading parties is absolute moral opposite of the couples assembly historically and managed Foucault represents for confrontation with the police racism. The police will be known today develops into the bourgeois society liberal satisfaction of law security guardianship conserved by the goal police force to the new custom race force is solidifying the use for rest on less on a division of cultures than multinational consensus to govern and legitimize and monopolize the terms of rationalities that governing what if struggles were waged alongside of rigorous historical analysis including the self that is constantly led to embrace race as a way of discovering disclosing and inventing itself. Our alternative alternative, reflexive, and comparative work on the colonial practices that produce connections between race, sexuality, gender, and class, attending to practice rather than taxonomy. And origin helps resist biopolitics. Stoller 10 in colonial documents comparison with treaty compares certain commensurabilities connoting policies pointedly undermine others assignations of specific sensibilities to particular social guys would never affect colonial ownership would set aside contextual differences or elevate the crucial commensurable racial categories into valuable across imperial conversation would Foucault urges to think the unthought it was an opportunity to turn back to work by use as shores of the sexually charged racism and miscegenation. We turn to the practice rather than rubrics to the effects of policies rather than how they were named. Establishment of the Native American borders go to the U.S. Southwest and those in the Netherlands, hygienic project in the Philippines and Australia, or imperial authorities that wrestle the half-caste as well. We read our own comparisons and look at race making the imaginary colonial policies governing agents targeted the cultural, domestic, and sexual proximity that they saw in the season of persons practices were singled out as markers of dangerous sensibility in the arts of governance and measures of what was in excess were the case. 1. Voting on presumption. A. Voting after not resolve any of the desires nor the relationship with the affirmative is identified as parasitic black woman's flesh. Ballots only signal the winner and loser. It's not a referendum on what beliefs, feelings, or relationship individuals that may need to change. B. Voting after the performative contradiction because they stake their winner loss in the semis of the NDT on the complete abjection of black women's flesh, reject this historically patriarchal trope of domination. C. They do not defend a change from the status quo. Affirming black women should not hold themselves responsible for meeting the world's expectations of truism, not a prescriptive change. Second, there is no symbolic order. Lacanian theory of language is hopelessly ahistorical, psychologically and biologically deterministic. The phrase 13 discussing help us learn how people identities are altered over time, how culture, Germany, dominant groups, society, secure identities, or complexity of meaning, networks of interpretation, description, not secreted by people's bodies, nor are they excluded by people's psyches. No, one is simply a woman, one is a white Jewish middle class woman, a lesbian, socialist, and one is not the case of people's social identities are constructed and individually think they alter over time, shifting with the ages and shifts in ages, practice, and affiliation. Germany's object term discourse in the face of power, it is possible to establish the common sense how to pervasive access to the dominance effect of production of social means, how to stratification along the lines of respect. Discourse of construction of social identities, not the ensemble description that certainly in society comprised monolithic symbols of nor the dominant groups exercise absolute dominant control. Never meaning even on the condition of subordination, women participated in making a cultural structures, modern studies, language is symbolic. This modern constructions object of study by abstracting from the social practice of the context of communication is working by splitting the signification of the long symbolic system of the proles. Speakers use of language made of the long proper object language is insisted long be chronic rather than diachronic. Their way of voices object of study is static and atemporal abstract even historical change because the abstraction of the prole structureless mono practice questions of practice agency that speaking subject and not illuminated the process by which cultural Germany secured and contested because the model theorized the fund of available linguistic meanings a single system of aliens is also monolithic view signification reducing discourse of symbolic system structure. So the model evacuates social aging, social conflict, social practice, colonialism begins to look viciously circle that purports to describe the process by which individuals acquire subjectivity. One of the result of the circularities, ironclad determinants of phallus women's disadvantage, place in the symbolic quality and cutting cultural authority is masculine and never historically contingent traffics of dominance now appear as a variable feature of the human condition. Subordination of the street is described in an inevitable destiny of civilization, unsettled view, the autonomous psychological imperatives given inevitable culture and history can away they are political localities of false created psychological is the claim the symbolic word is required by the demands of an enculturation that is independent culture along its troubling positivity in order symbolic order whose powers to shape identities dwarfs to the point of the extinction historical institution practice like Canadians and historical structural abstraction along with variable historical phenomena like family forms of childbearing practice. The result would be accepted as symbolic word. The essential historical practice would be accepted. So rather than a claim to determine the structure of subjectivity was collapsing into an empty ontology committed to the general psychoanalytic proposition that gender identities takes one for all the kingdoms of all help us understand formation social mechanism falls into the imaginary so far as formation bets on linguistic innovations on their own civil Canadian because the case of a symbolic system is inconceivable where there could ever be any kind of linguistic innovation for Canadian. There's simply a single universe of discourse systematic so monolithic that not even one can conceive of alternative prescription multiple scripts or struggles of social media catastrophe hegemonic counter-hegemonic definition one cannot conceive reality of clarity of different speakers. 3. The black Atlantic critical diction demonstrates the possibility of reclaiming humanism while associating the state involved in 100% humanism fuse simplicity with power to lie long critical community that make it difficult to think and identify aspect of given race for the point beyond their actually existing form insist on negative critiques so the work to identify several alternative specific kind of where they might want to create particular thinkers like Sarah within the black Atlantic critical section remind us not the former categories of freedom justice democracy solidarity and humanity the dominant actors who have responded to greater them genealogical insights of let's call it established to be used change of equivalence with majority to the Western liberalism production of political majority to a one-dimensional liberalism obscure the many currents of a progressive ancient liberalism with the church and modern Western political thought it fails to recognize a significant number of non-European colonial and election aging and empirical structures where active participants such tradition within tradition occidental reinforce the archaic civilization of some within comes through and unrelated wars supposedly European category political majority among as much African and Caribbean thinkers who co-produce African Caribbean thinkers produce an abstract in general of a proposition about humanity history and the world's decision never granted the Europe the possession of majority of universal humanity that was always already translocal and fundamentally Caribbean never traded self-determination emancipation freedom equality or just essentially European history recognize the residues of resources for more just human and integrated the ways of living cut the card of living together cut the card and living together for black feminist thought is compatible with discussion of institutions Hill Collins Nate and covered economic growth transformation through the process of exclusion because the many so large scale segregation cannot be shipped over that circle. Interest yields only change visible Protest will require to bring change around appreciate the policies and procedures themselves constantly important because of strategy within the domain because the U.S. contains committed for reform change by a lot of black women have used the legal system. African American women have aimed to challenge the laws that legitimate segregation, racial organization, national organization, even specific purpose. All been used and changing laws have formed the focus even political institution for African Americans full participation in the U.S. society when laws will change African American women considerable success not only in getting laws changed but assimilating government action for years passed on the Federal Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, and other important legislation outlaw discrimination, change legal climate, greater African American women protections, class action laws to result in tangible benefits. Despite new challenges, legal strategies have yielded and will continue to produce victories. Much resistance occurred outside the powerful social institutions of African American women, often included the same social institutions that long excluded an increasing number of African American women gained access to higher education, occupied positions of authority inside government agencies. To achieve these required changing U.S. laws, finishing that card above, and the inherent insistence on the modern terms of radicalism were shared legacies and common that may help us rethink the inherent structure of the relationship between territory, ethnicity, consciousness, and interest. That card is now marked at and interest.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. So to what extent can debate create a transformative potential in terms of our subjectivities?
Transformative potential. We don't think it can in the sense that competitive incentives drive the activity we do. To the extent that you win, that competitive incentives don't totally matter. We think that can only be facilitated by clash, which requires predictable limits.
Okay, so competitive incentives, if it were to matter, no value to like empathetic change in debate.
Well, I think that more so begs the question of whether or not the competitive incentives force us, or not necessarily force us, but, cause us to make decisions within debates that, strategically benefit us rather than push for some sort of transformative change. So you, for example, you read this AF only against us because you think it was strategic against us. You were not reading this AF against other teams. So I think that demonstrates an example.
Oh my God. All right, so
You're here. What's your excuse for that? We read this AF like this morning.
yeah, honestly. Okay, so the
You
second
had that Usufruct AF too. You had your dollar AF. You read
let's
those based on who you think it's strategic against.
let's move on. Okay, clash. What's the intrinsic value of argument problematization?
What's the intrinsic value of argument problematization?
Problematization.
Well, we think that to the extent there can be any benefits of the debate, it requires us to do in-depth research on, third and fourth line responses to various arguments. And for that to occur, we need a limited topic to ensure that there is an equitable research burden for the affirmative and the negative.
So is this agnostic to the content of the debate? Do you have any reason why it's what?
Yeah, we think it's agnostic to the content of the debate. We think that debates over the resolution, because they provide a predictable limit for us to begin research from, can ensure that no matter what the content of any given debate is,
cool. The critique. What component of our description of sexual violence do you disagree with?
We disagree that there is some drive that is explaining racism. We rather think that it is socially constructed, and in fact, that the affirmative claims regard. No, you do not think it's socially constructed. You think it's based on an inherent drive that exists.
Okay, so you think we made a biological argument? You think we made a biological?
We think you have made an argument. We think you have made an argument about drives. We think you have made an argument about the psyche and drives.
Okay, look, we've not made an argument about drives. We made an argument about desire. Do you think there's any component of sexual desire?
Yes,
No.
That is what our link argument is to. That is what our link argument is to.
So
yes.
Your argument is quite literally no component of sexual desire goes into violence against Black women.
No, there's no sexual drives. No.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Okay. Hey, we're not taking prep, by the way. We're just sending out to AC.
Anybody Sorry, we're trying to track down a stand really quick.
Okay. Bryce Rao, if you're out there, thank you for your stand. Are we good for an order? Everybody get a deck? Okay. It is the case, T, and then the critique. Okay. We all good? Okay. I see Armin's. Turn it all the way down on your computer so I can turn it up on mine, just in case there's a verbal interruption. Okay, Arvin's good. Is everybody good? Okay. Black women are precognitively figured as the object of competition. The world is structured by a marketplace of desire. Wherein for one to reach for something, to reach for subjectivity, they must first figure someone as possessing the trait they want to dispel in order to subjectivize themselves. There are two impacts to this. The first is intramural violence. An easy example of this phenomenon is the welfare queen. People hate the welfare queen because they see her as a lazy, broke government dependent, which reveals self-hate and internalized capitalist hatred of the poor. However, the one that is consistently figured as poor, as dependent throughout history has been the Black woman, meaning that self-hate emerges through displacement of hatred onto Black women. An easy example of this is austerity, which first requires an image of what populations justify drawing down welfare. The second is internalized non-value. Black women are the recipients of violence that is leveraged in the psyche when you have to hate something to love yourself or move about the world. And the thing that you have to hate is yourself. It produces a distinct form of psychic violence to which there is functionally no grammar with which to explain. This requisite self-negation in order to affirm oneself is all about which paradigm one chooses to endorse, one that reads Black women as object or one that chooses a return to the breach. Voting affirmative to return to the breach is a mode of non-escape. It requires an excavation of the mythos that psychic hatred of Black women produces in order to confront those scripts of desire, reversing the iteration of psychic misogyny into the future. Their first and third presumption arguments are a non-starter. We have expanded the definition of what voting AF would entail, or a departure from the status quo would mean. Tarifa says that the state is merely a microcosm of our relationship between the self, other, and our desires, but voting affirmative is not making the AF happen. It is endorsing the political truth of our advocacy, which is no different than any other. When I see the idea that you should have a different burden for chaos is racist and proves the double standard of whiteness. The F does not double turn itself. It does not tie the ballots to the objection of Black female flesh. It is a critique of self-interest. Our F is primarily about the role that non-Black women should play in confronting anti-Black or misogyny, and says that it's actually the rationale for anti-Blackness in the first place is that no one wants to admit they're racist, which means that we straight turn this impact in any ballot framing argument that they can go for. The next say this like hella long Fraser card, the F is a K of what they're talking about. You should refuse a simplistic Cartesian framework for what exists. The one I see was a gender theory critique of politics. Descriptions of social relationships are always structured by normative visions of how society should be ordered. In other words, Arvind is obviously fucking wrong. The sex drive exists and politics is contorted by the way that we signify sexual relationships. So you shouldn't read into our psychoanalysis claims as inexorable relationships, but contingent examples for how civil society organizes itself around the principle of competition. Their cards essentially amount to, you cannot explain psychoanalysis with the language of strict science, which we can safely acknowledge that there are domains beyond science that we should employ as relevant input towards politics. In fact, we've impact turn the strict containerization of all thought through Western rationality, since it imports the neoliberal conception of the self for independent observation, which is our De Silva piece of evidence. They say Wilder, one, this will be straight turned on the repressive hypothesis K, because the paradox of humanism that we will apply in the context of our objection thesis doubly applies to this flavorless humanism good argument too. Their stuff neglects modernity. That is a key distinction, because humanism's logical conclusion is capitalism, whose logic of self-interest inevitably results in inequality in the long durée, because freedom becomes a rat race instead of collective, which looks like intergenerational wealth equality is impacted out via the case. They say PCH, we're not a rejection of political movements, rather that the dominant conception of civil politics is centered around competition and self-interest is a self-denying cycle of hatred that is mapped onto Black women, or when I see pre-structures which political demands are advanced in the name of reform. We have said that society's phallic attachment towards property and economics inevitably results in racial capitalism. So recognizing the contradiction inherent within this is necessary for true emancipation. Framework. Counter-interpretation, anti-competitive debate. Think of this as a radical reinterpretation, not of the words in the topic, but rather a re-envisioning of debates instead of structure. We need to refuse the tenets of competition as a vehicle to interpret our motivations in this space. You should think of this as seeing ballots as referendums on truth, not a superiority hierarchy amongst debaters that activates the desire to become better advocates. It's refusing the notion that teams own ballots and use that ownership for the pursuit of intellectual advancement. It's endorsing speech times and pairings as opportunities to gather different perspectives and generally become educated. Most importantly, it's more or less a description of how debate is now. You should evaluate this debate on a higher level of abstraction. T is different than a case argument. It poses the question of whether the app should have even been debated in the first place. If you do not think Black women are worth discussing without a plan, you should ask yourself why you think that. Our case should frame your understanding of your positionality, especially as 5 non-Black judges adjudicating a nigga debate. Lastly, you should remember that topicality speaks from a legalistic, not a moral perspective. They need to win that it's valuable to introduce a procedural that will keep debaters in line with the exact wording of the resolution, not just a world where everyone stopped reading chaos would be good. Our theory of power plays terminal defense to their aspirational and of evidence claim that reading topicality will ever force anyone reading a planless affirmative to give up their genuine research interests or be known to Ruiz Valverde for the winner. Yeah, their interpretation is worse. One, framework rests on anti-Black neoliberal notions of self-interest. Our theory disputes the premise of framework and limits because it's based on the capitalist perversion of evolutionary theory that each person is an individual that must act in accordance to self-interest to advance beyond or at the expense of others in the educational sphere, which demonstrates that framework is based in the racial capitalist logic of preemption. It justifies the cessation of accessibility requests and manifests in a racialized and gendered history of deployment of framework against Black women. 2, class is not intrinsic value. Framework's validation of content neutrality encourages racism. Again, and 20, we have to approach teaching and learning as for more than simple content delivery. Many tries to inculcate a reverence or objectivity, separation of subject knowledge over or worth more scholarly and thus authoritative than agreement to privilege intellectual rational knowing, the agreement to avoid self-examination, operate powerfully in much of academia, this pressure for neutrality, that knowledge disdain. Her personal introspection as part of our work has operated as a cultural imperative of compassion or scholarly detachment. We see the harmful ways in which this plays out in the ways predominantly white department characterizing place as a bothersome playing of the race card. 3, tyranny, Paul, relevance. John Jones in 9, the common frame must be falsely relevant ideas that are very recent innovation universities, as well as to teach their students not to get research. Very produces subject distortions, study things back for the allure of research grants, which advance one's institution and career versus the thought of a fate as a marginal soul and capable of appointment policy relevant, have predefined what is relevant, drawn into evidence making, marked evidence making. Their model doesn't have or solve an impact. 1, no limits, explosion, or uniqueness for fairness, which takes out their independent predictability. Impact, we're not here for purely competition. A purely competitive justification means that teams that have poor win-loss records have no reason to participate. 2, KVK debate has 3rd and 4th level testing of arguments as well. There are incentives for avoidance of negative offense and policy debate as well, which is why 2A red ball takes instead of withdrawal. 3, fairness is not an impact. It is unquantifiable and inevitably lost because of speed, experience, access, and coaching discrepancies. Repressive hypothesis. K. 1, burn to both. 2, more or less, 1AC cross-X did not go the way they needed for this critique to link. The 1AC was a critique of the subject-object distinction as the binary categorization of whiteness and blackness in order to activate violence. It grows the category of political agency to include the rival, which breaks the neat classification of race that greases the gears for global racial violence. If they're offensive seriously that there's no form of sexual power or desire involved in violence against Black women, then that's obviously an affront to reality and a net benefit to the permutation, and honestly, probably a reason why we should just win the debate alone. First, their theory cannot grapple with our thesis of desire. Subject-object distinction is disrupted by the 3rd category of objection. An object that contains elements of the subject, whiteness, maps itself onto Black women vis-a-vis the casting of competitive desire and self-interest onto the object, such as each moment of objectification serves as a moment of reflection. Blackness is reduced to the ultimate form of psychic property, becoming the ultimate cornerstone for identity and desire. This is the moment of the breach before one creates a sense of identity. There's a desire to become a separate identity, which begins at one separation from the mother. The implication is that this places the concept of the Black mother into a paradox. Blackness is ontologically separated from motherhood through slavery. So the Black mother is trapped within whiteness's infinite interpretation. The impact to it is that their theory of power is literally structured by a paradox without our method. We've identified a cornerstone of Western modernity that makes it impossible to create the universal conception of the human without artificially castigating the figure of the Black woman. Their cards also do not match up with their tags. We are a critique of Blackness as an immutable interpretive frame that is constituted contingently by the subjectification and objectification of the Black woman. Their evidence suggests that a binaristic conception of anti-Black violence, that it's a form of species conflict, that Blackness represents a state of genetic ontology, is entirely compatible with our 1AC critique of race science as a mean to index individuals through the premise of independent observation that was created in the wake of Enlightenment's individualist idealism. The alternative is either the affirmative or cannot solve our critique of the psychological pursuit of self-interest. Let's see. Finishing Jones, that academics will tend to be selected by the whole world based on whether they will reflect and the overall interest that underpin the prevailing order. Rejection views imperialism was not part of whatever constituent presidency headed to the policy physical thinkers around institutions of the American hegemony. It qualifies them to act as advisors to Prince critical voices are unlikely to ever hear the call to serve at stake. It's problem solving critical theory generating suggestions as to how the system can be run as the critical theories is mind why the system exists in the first place. Policy relevance of Jesus' most structured form when it becomes so dominant that imperial space to take about orders in a hostile fashion. They suggest measures to securitize everyday life. We need to fully respect work that will never be policy relevant because it refuses concerns on agendas. Well, damn, perfectly timed.
Are you good?
All good whenever you're.
Cool. What metric do we use to determine that debate is anti-competitive?
Oh, what does that mean?
Like, how do we know that debate is anti-competitive? Like,
determine whether or not the debate is fair. Tautological question could equally be applied to you.
again, I need you to answer my question. When do we know the debate is anti-competitive? How do we determine that?
Answer your question.
I don't care that you think it's
Of what, anti-competitive debate would look like, but it's like you're asking me a question that you linked to. So it's like I'm not really sure why I'd answer that.
so you're not going to answer it. Okay, what AFs then would be limited? What AFs would be limited out under your interpretation?
None, right?
Yeah, it's not like
Yeah, not really a relevant question.
So you can read any AF. You can say whatever you want on the affirmative under this interpretation.
do it now.
Yeah, you could do that now.
No, you cannot because there's a predictable limit. So
Yeah.
does your interpretation? You do not think your interpretation sets a limit on the topic? Just so we're clear.
We did not
Doesn't look.
as like
It's like what?
Okay,
You're like,
maybe a better way to ask this is:
Are we
you
gonna
do
win
not
a
think your
limit
interpretation?
on
Does your
evidence.
interpretation set a limit on what the AF can say?
no.
You've now asked. the
No. Okay.
same question. We have said
Okay.
no.
Why? My next question is: Why is self-interest?
Counter-interpret. Like
Why is self-interest intrinsic to topicality?
we've identified the manner by which framework reflects self-interest. So we've never. The problem with what you're saying is that you're just assuming because we're reading evidence using the language of psychoanalysis that we're just saying everything is intrinsically tied to such. We've done a socio-historical analysis of framework in the context of racialized legacy of preemption and suggested that that is likely.
Why would people stop being interested in a world of and self-interested in a world of anti-competitive debate?
Well, I mean, one, I don't really think we need to win. Like nobody in the world is self-interested, for anti-competitive debate. But also we've compartmentalized, what self-interest looks like in the context of the debate. And we think that our model facilitates a better world for that.
Okay. I want to ask a couple questions about the case. You said that that you should vote AF to endorse the political truth of your advocacy. Why do you need the ballot for the judges to conclude that your advocacy is true?
Same question Kevin gave. It's like voting AF is not the referendum on the political truth in the sense that it verify, we said racism bad. That's like a true argument. The political truth of our advocacy is determined by whether or not non-escape is something that would be beneficial for reducing.
Why do you need the ballot for that is my question.
Do you have something you want to say you're leaning over?
I don't know, we've not presented an existential reason why the ballot is key, but we're impact turning why.
Okay, cool. Tyler, are we starting prep?
Okay, 8:38. Should be sent. T, then the case. Although I think we're missing a judge. Okay, order's going to be T and then the case. Did everyone get the doc? Can't really see if that's a yes. USC, you all good? Judges? Awesome. I'm going to start in like 10 seconds or so. So if anyone's not ready, say something. Cool. Debate is a game. Two sides compete. One side loses. Any affirmative display where switch sides wants to be winner, loser, whether the structural rules are both agreed to follow the resolution. Exists not enough as a final consensus on interest policy, but a stasis to ensure balance half an egg. Research for indecisively skirt the topic to gain a competitive advantage. Frame topicality through competing models of debate. Regardless of the individual reasons we're all here, we all subscribe to competitive norms, collectively agreed. Debate possesses some intrinsic value. The reason we're all here is to debate each other wins. The logical implication is we should give both sides an equal chance to burn the country. Topicality is an untenable research for the negative answer. Any unbreakable deviation in relation to the resolution justifies the underlying procedural framework that actualizes every benefit from the activity. 2C1, anti-competitive debate. 1, they link and their model cannot solve. The structure of debate terminally denies the rejection of ownership and the tendency to competition in this space. The winner of the debate will receive a ballot that cannot be shared. The losers, Julie and Kevin, cannot share their speaker points. If there's no way to enter a double win to the tab room, introducing the one it seems to debate and then rewarding them with a ballot is a clear double truth of this argument. A ballot can never just be a referendum on truth so long as USC expects you to technically evaluate their arguments and adjudicate the debate fairly. This is why they would not cede the ballots to us in cross-legs. Impact turning, giving us the ballots equally disingenuous because they have refused our offer to have an anti-competitive discussion about the case. 2, USC's counter method calls for the judge to also be the jury and executioner, which debates that determine are genuine, which are not. There's no way to truly assess the various intentions or orientations for debate, at which point this debate becomes sufficiently anti-competitive, which is what Arvin was getting at in cross-legs. This is bad and encourages the violent model of intervention where decisions are not intellectual disagreements, but becomes a referendum on the personality or incentive structure of individual debaters. They cannot be out of the way. Anyone caring about competition in debate, voting for USC does not limit any people caring about ballots who wins the NDT. It certainly does not stop the racial exclusion impact they read to ownership, as proven by the argument that reading topicality does not force anyone to give up their interest, which they made later on the flow. Equally applies to this argument and their claim to shift research incentives in debate. All your ballot does is assess who did better debating and send one team to the finals to the NDT. 3, this imposition that academic research cannot be targeted is resolved by a clear stasis point like the resolution. It's an ahistorical assumption. The debaters cannot truly research through a filter like the resolution. And Poirier read particular asked about NATO and genocidal past last year. Records read particular asked that were critical of space management policy. USC misreads what debate is now, what our model debate would defend. Our goal is not to force anyone reading a planless half to give up their genuine research interest, but instead to provide a stasis point through which that research can be filtered. For the new US prepared for this tournament, we're not half-baked. We're researching these decisions and thinking through the ideas of the topic for months now. Their interpretation does not resolve the grind associated with research. If anything, it exacerbates the grind. It has no limiting function, which explodes their research. And 5, just as that are unnegatable truisms do not defend an advocacy. They explicitly said in cross-legs no limit on the topic whatsoever, which means at worst you are comparing an imperfect topic to no limit whatsoever that evacuates role for the neg. And the potential for clash and streak incentives means there's a moral hazard to pursue those advocacies. There's no clear line for a topical af is under anti-competitive debate, other than quote unquote we read asked about things we are interested in, which explodes limits and decimates clash. You should evaluate the worst messages of their model, not just the best. Finally, competitive incentives are better for truth-seeking competition. It pushed me to read this Chow book to beat the case. The most truthful arguments are the best arguments. They're the most difficult to refute. The more competitive the debate, the more truthful it becomes. The more we clash, the more we test each other's arguments. And truth emerges. So some arguments of exclusion is nebble and good to foster discussion over limited resolution. They say self-interest, 1, crossed by the arguments from above. This is nebble. They link because they pretend like competitive incentives don't matter to their own decisions, which is equally disingenuous. Otherwise, why would USC strategically break new round 1, then shift their advocacy based on who they're debating, or go for the politics and states counterpoint what's convenient for them? 2, the intern does not solve their example about camp hiring practices or structural barriers that make debate unfair. They admitted later on the flow that unequal access to coaches, being able to attend camp, scholarship access to financial circuit experience, etc. All things that make debate structurally unfair, but not reading a plan does not resolve those. 3, historical weaponization of fairness, topicality, or not DAs or a model. Yes, we should always reject moves that segregate debate, but does not mean all appeals of fairness are intrinsically bad. This is the false causal logic of policy debate produces Carl Rose, even though no, that's ridiculous. Topicality is historical association. The racialized logic does not mean topical debate itself is racist. History topicality is a pick that agrees racial disparities exist in debate, disagrees that divesting from the topic is a solution. Finally, well, debate is fundamentally a game. Of course, it can mean a lot more to each individual debater, but at the end of the day, it's ultimately a competition. It's impossible to divorce yourselves from the competitive structure of debate. It's proven by USC's other apps where they've had plans where they go over econ DAs picks, and that's good. Debate has a winner and loser, judges in the back of the room, time limits on speeches, cross-lex, prep time, pre-round prep, you get speaker point trophies, the structured speeches, etc. So having a balanced topic is part of preserving the game structure of debate. The fact that the game exists means it must be balanced, which is why fairness is an intrinsic good. Even if it doesn't sound that compelling on face, the only way for any benefit to be produced from debate is the judge can make a decision between two sides who have had a relatively equal chance to prepare for a common point of debate. They say clash is not content neutral. 1, topicality does not posit objectivity. There's no one objective truth, and it's certainly not the resolutional statement or argument. It really should be a stasis point that guides academic research and personal interpretation. Obviously, there's some premises that are irrefutable, like racism bad. Our point is they actually have to stake out a position of relative controversy for this precise reason. 2, disproven by the TVA, they can write an app about healthcare and antitrust from meeting racial inequalities or racial cartels out from last round that explicitly invoke the unfinished legacy of Reconstruction, justifying the need to disrupt collusive behavior of racial cartels. Finally, next they say policy relevance. I'll explain the clash impact here because it straight turns this argument. 1, it's critical to the iterative process of debate. The content of any given round never binds us to any particular belief system or vision of the world. We get conflicting speeches and conflicting issues in different rounds, but arguments of exposure and refinement over the course of a season is intrinsically valuable. The improvement of any body of ideas relies on testing them over time, enables debaters to research, strategize, refine arguments, and arrive at new convictions around the world about the world. 2, clash over limited resolutions. That's where access to its benefits. It's possible to prepare for the multitude of cases under their interpretation, particularly without clear solvency thresholds and access to competition. The results of this debate with the negative is so unprepared, which sacrifices the opportunity to engage in the best discussion possible. Every conversation has an affirmative, but only debate requires negation, which means that every intrinsic benefit of debate stems from preserving the opportunity for rejoinder. 3, it turns their often success of their advocacy relies on testing and exposure to sensing voices to refine it into the best version possible. Criticisms of the TVA or policy actions by the federal government are features of, not disadvantages to our model, because it preserves the opportunity for the comparison to distinct political methodological approaches. The process of clash outweighs the content of any particular discussion because the debates in which enable us to attain new conclusions about the world are themselves intrinsically valuable. They say no limits, explosion, 1, cross-play. The arguments above, yes, debate means different things to everyone, but at the end of the day, it's still a game. It's impossible to disentangle competitive incentives. USC would probably be pissed if you decided to flip a coin instead of making a decision in this debate. 2, teams of poor win-loss records also care about fairness. We've all been in JV, but these competitive incentives still exist because people want to get better to improve their chances of winning. 3, competition does not have to come at the expense of education and practice. The community already has other ways to deal with bad process. Counterpoints our model. It's not competition at all costs. It establishes a simple baseline for topical action. The rest is up for debate. They say KBK debates. 1, they're worse. They rely on post-hoc credibility. The resolution mechanism determines research and prep, which means our K-links do not apply because they don't defend that mechanism under their model. We can only cut new Ks after the app's been broken. 2, uniquely true because the 1AC does not have a card that says the word antitrust, which proves how unpredictable it is even for K teams. Finally, the impact of fairness, debatability outweighs and proceeds our offense. 1, it only has value because the collective thousands of hours we invest in it every weekend view, so it's transformative potential. We are all here for different reasons. The only thing we commonly agree to by our presence is debate is valuable. We're all here to win. So logical implications, we all have an equal chance. It's the only true benefit of the activity because it undergirds a competitive incentive to research and prep, engagement, clash in the round of rigorous argument, strategizing, testing. We know there is some intrinsic value to the activity that supersedes the sacrifices made by working and traveling, so you should preserve that for every competitor who found value in coming to. Debatably turns every impact into competition. It's not an impact by itself. It is in the context of the game because the only possible means by which this activity produces values by operationalizing competition to incentivize research and clash, accomplishing anything else with balance impossible because the solvency mechanism presupposes the existence of the game itself. Finally, it's necessary intrinsic debates functioning. Debatably underpins evidentiary analysis, norms, argument evaluation by the judges while deliberating. Reciprocal abides by speech times and side constraints. States described every other competitive feature of debate, wins and losses, speaker points that was all explained above. So it's logical for it to conclude that fairness is bad or unimportant because it presupposes a communicative structure in which fairly arriving at the judgment is possible. The case debate, 2, starting with 1 and C1, you should vote negative on presumption. The affirmative cannot identify problems about the world that need to be a threshold for solvency. A, voting affirmative does not endorse a political truth, nor does it resolve or undo characterizations. The black woman decision, this debate will not change how any of us debate, nor will it change our method of research engagement. The ballot will only signal the winner of our head-to-head and the better team. In that sense, that goes to the final of the NDT. The argument of the Winnie's rejection of intentional capacity undoes the already turning wheels of resistance. It's a reason to vote negative because the ballot is not essential to black women's capacity to resist. This is demonstrated by the fact that ballots cannot implicate the subject position of black women, and there are not even any black women in this round to advocate for USC's rejection. B, voting affirmative as replicative of violent history, political leadership's use of black women's labor for their own fruits. The Kabahi River Collective, which Yaffle tout as contributors to her scholarship, was a counter movement led by black women to the violently patriarchal leadership and structure of black political movements in the 60s and 70s. For the ass politics to have merits, the white spectators in the room intramural against violence against black women becomes becomes necessary, which becomes the endpoint of their scholarship. Finally, the AF is not a change from the status quo. Oklahoma PW did this in 2019, affirming that Black women should not hold themselves responsible for meeting the world's expectations is a great message, but not a new one, nor one that is unique to the 1AC. The AF enforced, in fact, is net worse because it is another consumption of Black women's images, which turns their argument that the AF does not tie the ballot to the abjection of Black female flesh. This proves the premise of our argument. They strategically pivot away from that they advocate what the AF means. The moment they are pressing them, it turns from withdrawn our offense, because our argument is you can discuss racism in a debate, but not use objectification as a justification for why the AF is good and the research project is serving of the ballot. 212, no symbolic order. 1, they have said anti-Blackness is ontological because we have a libidinal investment in existing identity categories. That was clear from what I see cross-6 is based on the assumption of a fixed symbolic order, that there's a master signifier of the seller that governs the operations and meaning of all other linguistic and psychic concepts. Instead, you should treat power and language as operating productively, not repressively. Struggles over descriptive and descriptive identities, denies your structuralist model, and proves that linguistic and political innovation occurs over the history of language, historical institutions, and cultural practices that change over time. That's our phrase for evidence. Sure, the sex drive exists. We are impact turning the endpoint and implication of their theory of libidinal economy. We should treat language and institutions as malleable, repurposable, and changing over time instead of locking us into a static conception of gender theory or sexual relationships. Empathy produces more learning over time. Green 17, I distinguish taking empathy from sympathy and take out these processes of perspective, taking that they may draw effects and to build over time because we're not able to imagine the perspectives of different others because they're not close to us spatially, emotionally, and or physically. That is a relational ontology, not the simple notion that we are all related, nor the idea of my personal relationship, who I am, or agents co-constitute by social material, and take away to care of others because they are fundamentally part of our own agency. They don't simply influence us, they come to us. My failure to respond to others. Mark that card, respond to others.
That's Gruen, mark that respond to others. Okay. You good? Okay. Does the resolution matter? Does what the resolution is matter under your model of debate?
It matters that it's limited, and it matters that it's a point of controversy.
But the content,
so it can't just be like a truism.
But the content of the resolution is irrelevant. Like,
well, I mean, it might be relevant in terms of the debates that play out, but we aren't making a normative claim that we should debate out antitrust policy because that prevents extinction or whatever. Like, we're just saying that clash over limited resolution is good, and that preserving a modicum of stasis is necessary to access debates benefits over limited resolution.
Okay, what are debates benefits that you tout as the impact of clash?
I mean, any of the benefits, any of the things that you say debate could be used for, our argument is that debatability is a prerequisite to that. More importantly, we've identified clash as a process of arriving at new convictions about the world. It encourages debaters to expand their intellectual horizons, to refine their arguments, to research different literature bases, to strategize. Our argument is that all of that is fundamentally determined by an activity that is structured by some rules and the expectation that both sides enter the debate with an equal chance of winning.
Condition to access your offense is a limited and predictable topic.
Yeah.
So that could be any resolution.
It needs to be a point of controversy. It can't be like racism bad.
Why not?
Because debates require negation. Like, our argument is debates are good when there's both sides enter the debates with literature bases that they can stake out and positions they can defend.
This artificially created this definition of what is contestable or what is a controversy.
I mean, our arguments of debates over the resolution are good. I don't think we need to defend why like every possible resolution in existence are good. We have the resolution that we have. It is a stasis point, and we should have debates about that.
What's a unique benefit to debating this resolution?
I don't think we need to defend a unique benefit to debating this resolution. We have made an argument about why the debates over a limited and predictable topic are good.
It's not just this resolution. It's not every resolution. So which resolutions are they?
This resolution is an example of a topic that is good. It was democratically decided by the community. It has a stasis point. It has a clear literature base with dissenting voices on both sides that talk about different economic paradigms that inform antitrust, its relationship to different literature bases like anti-Blackness and settler colonialism. We believe that it provides a good stasis for debate, even if we are not making like an antitrust policy impact to topic.
KVK debates?
What about them?
How many have you been in this year?
Quite a few. We had one against you at the Dartmouth round robin.
Okay, so why are they worse?
Why are they worse? They rely upon post-hoc predictability. The AF does not have to defend a clear solvency mechanism from the 1AC because they aren't tethered to the resolution as a stasis point for controversy. It generally collapses into a world in which the 2AR goes for a perm and the 2NR goes for a generic because of the breadth of affirmatives possible under your intro. Sorry?
And you know that how?
We know that how? I mean, it's like the same way that you are making extrapolations about what your model of debate would look like. Like, we've been in debates before. We've been in lots of KVK debates. We basically did not go for T last year. And based upon our experience of those, we're making a normative judgment about the topic that we should be debating.
Sounds good.
Sending it out.
you mind if I go to the restroom? Oh, sorry. Do you mind if I go to the restroom? Dude, could you? Okay, I'm pretty sure everyone knows the question I'm about to ask. Do you mind if I go to the restroom real quick? Okay, sorry.
I'm gonna run the restroom as well.
Man, the part that's annoying is that he always does this when so I look bad, but it's his fault every single time.
We can't hear you, Dustin. You unmuted, but we couldn't hear you.
Okay, just the critique. Everyone good to go? USC, are you good? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. The 1AC reifies the discourse of 19th century biological racism. Despite the language of foreclosure and void, the 1AC presumes access to the truth of blackness as a repressed force that denies the order and power of capture. The elevation of race to the intractable real dehistoricizes the articulation and rearticulation of race across eras and spaces as various as absolute as Spain, Elizabethan England, colonial North America, and post-independence Brazil. Confronting different modalities of power demands we put into question the ahistorical flattening. The moral account of race should give way to a non-deterministic molecular approach. That's Chow. 2. Tropology and the symbolic order. In order to vote aft, he must believe that the figure or the pornotrope exemplifies the operation of a master signifier for an unchanging symbolic order. Discursive problematization can investigate the different rationalities the 1AC writes off as irrelevant. 3. The many historical subjects in the 1AC illustrates the danger of a deterministic and linear history. The assertion that there are no ethics not circumscribed by the irrational transformation of blackness is a reduction of all ethical debate to the Kantian program. Similarly, the 1AC argues there is no conversation about antitrust that doesn't grapple with the involvement with Reconstruction. Their evidence does not discuss antitrust and competition law in the U.S. post-states Reconstruction by 30 years. Careful investigation of the rationalities of U.S. monopoly capitalism, post-Reconstruction's industrialization, and the end of the first civil rights struggle could produce interesting connections, but they need to assert these connections in absolute terms to justify repurposing the same set of 1AC cards to explain new phenomena. 4. Our alternative solves the case. Comparative work on colonial governance demonstrates that we should start critical interrogation based on practices and effects rather instead of a search for origins. Boarding schools, hygienic cordons, plantations in South Asia and the Caribbean, race-making institutions consistently relied on comparison and rearticulations that suited the needs of colonial governance. Unpacking these techniques of transnational governance helps understand the global biopolitics of liberalism instead of only its U.S. variety. Confronting biopolitical governance in the present demands a history of the present that renders the world in contingent terms. Asking how our world could become one other than deterministically anti-black demands a research and political agenda that asks how things could have been otherwise. The first 2AC one was the permutation to both. 1. They do not get one. The 1AC did not contain an explicit advocacy, and they said the debate is a search for truth. Our links are all mutually exclusive with that idea because our critique is a fundamental disagreement with their conceptualization of anti-blackness. I'll explain our links here. 1. The repressive hypothesis. The 1AC's theory of libidinal symbolic economy relies on the repressive theory of power. power. They say that, quote, the id suture to the black woman is both subjected to repression and to the dark cognate of Freud's female sexuality. The binary states of foreclosure for black motherhood and freedom for the white subject are a pairing that reflects the normalizing force of the psychoanalytic regime of truth. Race is an effect of modern regimes of power and knowledge, not a deterministic point of origin. The repressive account of power incites us to discourse of liberation, gratuitous freedom that presumes a space beyond the operation of power. Though the 1AC claims to interrogate the concept of the self-possessing and willing agent, it recommits our politics to the aim of liberation beyond civil society. The rationale for voting app is that this time, when you speak beyond the boundaries of the civil discourse of antitrust and political economy, you will know freedom. Blackness is void is the cornerstone of the logic of repression, and race is nothing more than a state of negation. Second, Oedipus Redux. The 1AC re-narrates the primal Oedipal myth, but not its organizing terms. According to the 1AC, the problem with the Oedipal myth is not the universalizing and normalizing scheme of desire, but the misidentification of the place of the phallus. Changing the location of the phallus does not alter the logocentrism of psychoanalysis. Their critique of Lacan and Freud is that, quote, contrary to Freud and Lacan's theorization, which fails to account for blackness in relation to the phallus, the white female also functions in multiple registers as a form of the phallus, since she is a conduit of power with the social relations established within chattel slavery. The 1AC pushes the search for the original moment of repression back, but only to confirm that there was an experience prior to the Oedipal triangle. We ask instead why the 1AC assumes that black woman is necessarily a mother. In the 1AC's reconfiguration of the primal scene, the, quote, black mother, and by extension all black women, is always already a rival for more than just a black child. The account of social death serving kinship ties presumes that kin is an original and unproblematic system for organizing desire. 3, if they win that psychoanalysis can be reappropriated, they should lose their critiques of topicality. Their KFTs that are conventional disciplines like economics, political science, and sociology are ways of disciplining blackness to fit civil society. If psychoanalysis, a discipline that has the same origins in European and colonial environments, can be repurposed, so can economics, political science, and all of the sources of critically informed topical apps. Their next argument is that they include the rival. 1, the theory of rivalry and mimetic desire is the link. It uses a transhistorical theory of scapegoating to codify desire at the level of species. Holding that we are mimetic creatures driven to repeat ritual sacrifice cannot be reconciled with the rearticulation of different systems of racialization with distinct power knowledge formations. The theory of rivalry also presumes two subjects competing over a common object of desire. This cannot be reconciled with the 1AC's claim that blackness is foreclosed from subjectification. When we say there is no sexual desire, our argument is that there is no inherent drive in the psyche that explains anti-black violence. Rather, social institutions and construction are what generate racism and then different racial formations. Their next argument is that blackness is psychic property. 1, claiming that blackness is a form of psychic property is a deterministic language of origin and certainty that is a product of a regime of truth. The history of race and racism should heed its discontinuous rearticulation instead of an aim for an originary point that unfolds in perpetuity. Reading the history of race and the continuous development of an epidermal schema oriented around black flesh is an anachronistic application of 19th century biological systems of racism. Their final argument is that they are a critique of racism. 1, they are not. I will explain the impact here. They are a form of planetary biopolitics. The global state of violence driven by police warfare is the production of governed relations between police, citizen, priest, confessant, and doctor-patient. The governance is a productive technique of power where dominating forces portray themselves as shepherding the health of the population. This proven by the investment of both white and non-white population in police forces to defend the imagined community. Even gratuitous torture or execution is repackaged under the pastoral rhetoric of peace and power. Racism is not a pathology to be cured, but an effective regulatory capacity for making live and letting die. That is our Chow evidence. Second, knowledge is productive, not descriptive. Their description of the world is driven by the repressive desire for black death, totalizes the power of the mythic slave master, which makes productive uses of liberatory governance impossible in favor of single transgression. When a relationship is transformed into a constitutive psychological drive, there can be no alternative world order. 3, this is an epistemological index. It may seem tangential, but our critique attacks the central assumption of the case. The app is a stool, and if we kick out one of the legs, it tips over no matter how solid it previously appeared. Our alternative solvency occurs at the level of the subject. We can refashion ourselves when we break from a view of power as repressive, as always requiring transition, and instead focus on what we can produce.
All right, 10. Okay. We're at 7:30. Okay. The order is the case, the K, T. All right, we all ready to go? Okay, who's not ready? Okay, we all good?
Harris.
Oh, Harris is good? Okay.
Harris is 1 sec.
Oh, no. Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to record it locally on my phone. Okay.
It's crazy right there.
All right, we good? Cool, let's get started.
Our thesis of self-desire controls every argument in the debate. Black woman is configured as the contradiction to capitalist competition. In the image of the Wall for Queen is poor, dependent, unwilling to give work, which gives coherence to the non-black sense of self. This means we have a large-scale explanation of desire that preconfigures the way that arguments are introduced in the debate and interpolated by debaters. The constant cling to equalize the playing field to reach the best version of ourselves. The Manchean liberalism that deals the perfect figure of humanity, the concept of black self-entries. You should vote affirmative to return the debate to the commitment to unraveling the logical parameters of self that indexes violence against blindness, showing the liminal paradox of the figure of the black woman, both the rival and civil society uses to improve itself, but also the pathology it seeks to get rid of. It's forcing non-black folks to confront this reality and dispelling the myths of self-improvement that leverage against black women. The bio does have transformative potential to identify both by the tariff evidence that we have on the 1AC and the empathy card at the bottom of the twin C, which will explicitly concede that identities are malleable and can be constructed in relationship to the arguments we introduce in debate and the discursive reanalysis of the 1AC. You can think about it like this: after round after round after round, constantly debating the instantiation of black women in the theory of power that we introduce the 1AC. How would that change subjectivity? You should not think about this isolated debate, but the model of debate, quote unquote, that they introduce to reject the 1AC in favor of a topical alternative. Whether there are black women in the 1AC misses the point, because our entire 1AC is built around the idea of non-black confrontations with the theory of power that we have identified. It's kind of awkward when they put our coach in the cases of non-unique affirmatives that would see the F is invaluable, especially when they read this affirmative, which is a type of non-black erasure that is the entire of the 1AC, entire 1AC is built around. The rest of the 2NC is basically racism was solved by the Civil Rights Act, so there's no impact to the F. The psychoanalysis, our critiques of psychoanalysis move in the same direction. The 1AC confronts the psyche of whiteness not as a social scientific fact, but as an imagined entity, and that one byproduct of whiteness's insistence on individualism is that it ends up behaving as if it were an individual with a set of desires and interests. The one that's missing the nuance of our application of psychoanalytic principles. We're revealing the naturalistic fallacy of desire. The 1AC builds on a proof by contradiction that if society has a set of interests and desires indexed by individuals and that collapse into a paradox, we castigate everything beyond whiteness is not productive, but we need that to become productive. So Sausality has no interpretation for politics. You can't falsify whether any policy is true because that's constituted by the reality that we wish to occur. The critique. Look, folks, Turner's really good at debate, but there are a couple of fundamental issues with this critique. One, there's disconnect between the link and the impact. They have no reason why representing desire in the way that we present the 1AC caused a global fucking race war. We have an independent internal link that says that racial science is justified under the guise of an independent observer, that we could categorize racial categories as something that we could objectively analyze as a Newtonian equation, which means we have independent internal link that solves the terminal impact. Second, desire, not drive. Our entire 1AC is built on the idea that there's a connection between gender and the way that we manifest violence, and the obstruction that reality is fucking absurd. When they see in the 1AC cross, there's no connection between sexual desire and violence against black women. So third, they have no theory of black womanhood specifically, just generic critiques about how race war manifests. So they have to read a specific reason why including the 1AC in this context is bad. Perm reject the material naturalistic fallacy of biological desire and acknowledge the social political constitution of black women, which exists with the 1AC. They're speaking from the perspective that we're critiquing. We're saying that whiteness as an imagined entity says into reality the libidinal drive that it wishes to exist in the 1AC. Was a critique of that through a social political interpretation of history. Antitrust link is a non sequitur. Not having a total history of anti-male racism does not mean that we have committed ourselves to drives. We did have an advocacy statement, and the search for truth is a logical result of any advocacy. So this is not a reason why the perm is competitive. Black women being all mothers is just fucking nonsense. Our card simply does not say that. It's just that there is within the subsection of black women, there are mothers who are pathologized, which is the premise of our offense. Stephen Spotter's the link to when they say that our critique of psychoanalysis give us access to topicality. We're not a critique. They say we're not a critique of racism, but endorse a global police state. What the fuck? This is this leap demonstrates the nonsense of the link and their impact. Yes, we agree that blackness is a regulatory strategy, which is why we include the welfare queen examples of material instantiation of violence. The topicality at the top. 2AC1 anti-competitive debate. Competitive incentives are not a natural objective activity, but a cultural myth that that's taught to us. But affirm is corrected to the
ideology of value neutral debate. Policy debaters research anti-choice counterplans because they want to go to law school. Critical debaters research anti-blackness because they genuinely have an enthusiasm for critical scholarship. You realize that competition is not a standalone value, but is only valuable insofar it brings us together as a community. The negative interprets the procedures of debate too far and says that because we have procedures, the only value to debate is the procedures. You have a set of you as a set of non-black judges should have a greater scrutiny to what you believe is the obvious benefits of debate. Think about all the things they said in cross-sects, controversial topics. What contributes a controversy? Democratic elected by the community. What is democratic? These are all things that are bizarrely unfalsifiable. That constitutes their interpretation of the topic. The impact turning content analysis system, which was mishandled by the 2NC, but simply their defensive clashes close to an empty value reiteration. You should ask yourself a deeper question of what kinds of debates are more likely to happen under their model of debate. If you're a detached plan, the USFG should antitrust anti-black companies. How would Dartmouth SV respond to our 1AC? If you think that you'll begin the 1NC with 3 advantage channel plans in states, and it's precisely the referral of confrontation with Biden that they desire. This is offense. Gannon says that privileging the value of academia is giving scholars rigorous analytical skills that agnostic to content debate is that's occurring, devolving the neoliberal fantasy of general intelligence. More quickly, they claim that debating everything the frame of antitrust gives you argumentative skills that activates your skills and advocating every other domain-specific issue more or less mirrors the same justification that conservatives roll out for IQ tests and STEM programs, which are weaponized against black folks. In similar fashion, Dartmouth's appeals to argumentative rigor are not neutral, but tainted by a racial epistemology that are only addressed by the 1AC's demand for them to confront our theory of power. This view knows that advocacy skills are context-specific, i.e. being good at debating or math does not make you more informed on critical race theory. So I think the reason why it's important to endorse antitrust debate specifically before weighing as an anti-standalone impact. This outweighs Jones says independently justification for conservative scholars to maintain their hegemony over bureaucratic circles, framing things as policy relevant only when it meets their age-old political processes. Issues like global inequality is only worth discussion when there's a terrorism event that is caused. It sees racism is only relevant if we get situated within neoclassical economics. This forced confrontation with 1AC is the counterplan that produces the encounter with the radical content that breaks down the procedural IQ test that's innocuously framed as a research conflict in debate. Thus, switch side debate does not solve our offense. If we were to introduce the same critique on the negative, they would respond in the exact same way. They'd say that it does not rejoin the plan, therefore try to permit we're impacting debates outside of critical debate too, so that they can't ask that offense. We don't need an explanation of how debate operates, because implication of speech times wins and losses, not that we should see every single part of the activity as motivated by strategic interests. It's just that debate is only valuable through the procedure, which is the premise that we've impacted. And think about evaluating third, the line by line fairly, as they think about evaluating the line by line as some technical act insulated completely by strategy, rather than a reflection of how a couple people interpreted this argument as a value heuristic that used to strategically analyze debates. We don't think that we should change the idea that we should change the research incentive debate is nonsense, because their entire argument is centered around that no person would ever be racism bad because they would be a waste of 2 hours. They're over-interpolating their own desire to win beyond everyone else and just radically assuming that everyone else believes the exact same way.
Okay. We have 8:38. Topicality, the critique, the case. Everyone good to go? I'll take that as a yes unless somebody interrupts me in the next 10 seconds or so. Awesome.
Mood negative for a limited topic, they maximize debate potential. There are two impacts that outweigh in turn their offense versus clash. Preserve your role for the negatives, what distinguish debate from reading a book or attending a Zoom class. Debate's the only conversation that records negation, which means negation is the only intrinsic impact of debate. Testing your accuracy against cooperative opponents produces the argument. Testing in-depth research and rigorous strategizing results in more intelligent debaters and advocacy honed through criticism. That outweighs your offense. They are correct. There are benefits to debate that extend beyond competitive incentives or the enjoyment yielded from debate as a game, but accessing any of those unique pedagogical benefits demands the iterative process of prep and research over a season's worth of debates within a limited resolution. Clash creates complex and interesting debates, and the benefits of debate as an activity will always outweigh the exclusion of particular pieces of content. There needs to be a safe point around which the community agrees to orient research and center its debates. Negation matters. It turns us into better advocates, scholars, and thinkers. So there will always be a moral hazard for death, dodge, engagement, reputation, stands a limited resolution. Second is debatability. Competition is the only structure and common denominator to the game. The athlete division that translates competitive incentives into a model for debate. That means debatability turns for offense. The only way debate achieves anything is by operationalizing competitive incentives to incentivize clash and research. The only thing we collectively agree to is that debate possesses some benefits no matter what for that outweighs the sacrifice each competitor makes throughout the activity. Rather than attempting to assess that singular endpoint of debate, you should sustain the procedure underlie the game. There's a reason USC would be upset if you ignore the line and arbitrarily send Dartmouth to NDT finals when the F wins out. Concede arguments expect you to adjudicate impacts fairly, presumes a committed model debate in which our ability to respond matters. This is not an argument that competition is the only factor that matters, but the underlying motivation behind this activity. The research we all do is a game that we are all here to play and win. Otherwise, nothing distinguishes debate from any other academic research forum. Layer one was the counter interpretation one. The interpretation solves nothing. It's impossible to fiat away competition, let alone the impacts like racial exclusion they've claimed are offshoots of that called ownership. The structured debate inherently militates towards competition. Your ballot must decide a winner or loser for this round. Taberman send one team to finals in the NDT. Debate can never just be a referendum on truth so long as USC expects you to adjudicate their arguments fairly and give them the ballot because they did the better research. They've conceded all their arguments about topicality being unable to drive community-wide shifts and asks that are red equally apply to them. USC is incapable of just fiating away competitive incentives to debate. It will definitely overcode the community. We are ultimately partaking in a competitive research game. It's a question of how we should operationalize those to reduce disparities and ensure relative equitable debates. Two, we are impacting the idea that debate ought to just be a call for truth, and if it does, our model solves better because for most debates, there is no one settled truth. The reason why debate possesses unique educational value is the capacity for negation, the opportunity for rejoinder over source of controversy. That was the overview they've granted us. Their intern grants no check on the scope of affirmatives whatsoever. There's no constraint on a literature basis, not even a requirement to defend a controversial accuracy, just that teams defend what is interesting to them. And there's a moral hazard to move towards truth instead of seeking out greater source of controversy. Because of the aforementioned incentives towards competition, those produce worse, less interesting debates from that goes for absolute generics instead of engaging gas scholarship and exacerbates the research grind, stands a limiting function, which means it can't solve our offense, but our model solves. The better arguments, the true arguments will gradually rise to the top over time as they win more debates, which means that competitive incentives are critical to motivate the research behind that process. Finally, I will explain our vision of competition. Our argument is never that debate's sole value rises for competitive incentives, that alternative forms of sociality cannot emerge in debate. Obviously, people still come to debate even if they never achieve competitive success at tournaments or points that competition specifically desire to win the bout by making the better arguments. It's the structuring common denominator, the floor that propels all the benefits of debate as a community. Is the reason debaters show up, attempt to win ballots, make winning arguments, spend hundreds of hours cutting cards, preparing for debates with the expectation that both sides will have an equal chance of victory, and that all that prep won't go to waste as soon as the app says new and breaks the app about a wholly unrelated lit-based topicality is not a psychoanalytic assessment of debaters to assess that everyone is only motivated by competition, but competition is the structuring feature of the game. It's a large part of what drives the labor caring community that makes it valuable. Why you all give your weekends to coach their teams and judge rounds online. Debate can be a community that extends beyond pure competitive incentives, but that community is itself founded on the game nature of debate. This is why they equally subscribe to competitive features like a winner and a loser judged in the back of the room, time limits on speeches, cross-ex prep time, pre-round press, speaker points and trophies. Why they refuse to give us the ballot in this debate and go for states, politics, and process counterpoints and other rounds when it's strategically convenient for them. It proves their model has no vision of how they translate to truly anti-competitive debate beyond just saying they arbitrarily should get the ballot. They say it's arbitrary what constitutes a controversy. I'm pretty sure this was litigated out in cross-sex. Sure, not every topic is worth debating, but we have this one. It was decided and negotiated by the community as a controversy that acts as a different literature basis regarding the intersection of different economic paradigms and interest for the racialized legacy, the consumer welfare standard, or numerous other creative ways to engage a topic. It's not our burden to provide a vision of what it means to debate every other possible topic in existence. They say clashes and empty value. For me, the racial cartels, after you respond to a three vantage counterfunds and states, we would lose on an instant 5-0 because that entire case is designed to critique DAs like politics and the states counterfunds by drawing on the history of Reconstruction. Similar example, the health graph from the 2 and racialized inequalities. It's not to say there won't be Emory's and Kentucky's. They'll just say head good from the 1C, but their model does not solve that either, since there's no check on argument. So it includes all the asks under our interpretation as well. The value of clash was explained above. It's basically the filter for research, argument, refinement, and preparation that produces new and interesting debates over sale and rehash once they say IQ tests and STEM programs. This is a non sequitur. Topicality is not tantamount to racial IQ tests. Some exclusions are Neville. Debates competitive structure means every round will have a winner, and any counter replicates exclusion. Our model ensures that research burns remain even and exclusions occur along reciprocal lines. Finally, the policy relevance offense is the only only remaining outs, which I debate does solve this offense. This argument relies on the winning that we should only discuss radical alternative policy, that we ought to dismiss the potential for government action altogether as an a priori destined to fail. Our model impact turns that implication. It does not accept policy good as a value statement or statement of truth, but it is established that whether or not particular antitrust policies are good or contestable premises should be debated. In other words, a model which is forced to disagree with the asked use of the policy action is better because then rather than condemning policy relevance in the abstract, if this becomes K debate's good, their valorization of K debate assumes the relative status quo debate where there's incentive to be somewhat technical resolution and there's a limited number of planless apps. Their term deletes those constraints, enables any literature based like Bataille, Berlio, Black Cybernetics, Afropats, Solution, etc. With any advocacy thereof to run debate, the neg needs to be granted permission to get links after the 1AC. You should value the endpoint of their model, not pass K debate in the abstract. They conceded the fact that it does not even say the word antitrust proves the detriment of research burden exacerbated by their model. The advocates determine the moral high ground, and the neg needs to collapse down into a generic that clashes everything rather than a specific critique that's tailored to the 1AC. The repressive hypothesis critique not going for a concede the permutation, just test the competition. It's not a reason to vote AF. We will also concede their arguments regarding the malleability of psychoanalysis demonstrates that historically European colonial disciplines can be reappropriated. It takes out all their K's of T's about policy relevance. It demonstrates there's no monolithic vision of policy that repurpose to better ends. The case debate starting with the presumption, vote negative on presumption. 1, no bout cast in the SEMS changes research practice, accessibility of this tournament, or the absent black women in debate to change their capacity to resist violence. They only signify who gets to move on to the finals of the NDT. No black women panelists or debaters in SEMS recorders prove their most important audience member won't get the message to the way you should reject the utilization of objectification for ballots as part of the long history of misogyny are present in revolutionary spaces. This is not non-black erasure. These forms of intramural violence against black women of powers USC's politic, and they've also conceded implicates their theory of desire. We do not need to win the case arguments. The topicality begs the question of whether USC should have been right in the first place.
All right, we have how much?
We have 7:30.
Okay, we're gonna take that. Let me get the stand set up and then we'll be all good. All right, I see you were missing. We're missing a few, so I'll probably just wait until everybody gets back. All right, are we good for an order? Okay, this is like gonna be slightly annoying, but it will make sense. So basically, I think it would be beneficial if everything was on the topicality sheet, because the first argument, I'm gonna answer the repressive hypothesis / presumption argument, folded in with what we're saying on topicality. But, theoretically, up to you all. I know that's like kind of not very helpful.
I mean, as soon as you said that it was going to be annoying, I was assuming that you're going to be flipping back and forth. So hearing just putting it all on one page is relieving.
Hey, we link turned it. All right. We all good? Is that yes? Awesome. Okay, I'm going to start in like 5 seconds. That's in a verbal interruption. Actually, let me get my screen down. Okay, I'm gonna start in like 3 seconds. Intramural violence. You have to hate something to understand why you want to be rich. You have to hate being poor to understand why you want to be rich. Requires an image of who is poor. The people who are consistently placed in those images are Black women. That causes austerity that undergirds the welfare Trump, welfare queen Trump. They've conceded voting affirmative to return to the breach. So often asking me to submit those about Black women that produces racial scripts it suggests instead of continuing the status quo of unconscious and unanalyzed desire that we should not escape, that we should lean in to refuse the gentle moments that authorizes anti-Blackness. This repressive hypothesis argument and the 2R and the presumption would only make sense if the 2R got to the case with enough time to answer the portion of the debate that is most relevant. Our argument is not if you discuss Black women, you're porno-tripping them. Our argument is not Black women need to hear our argument to feel better about themselves. Our argument is that when you do not attend to the ways in which you have enacted violence against Black women, i.e. not talking about one's own racism, that you are iterating psychic misogynoir into the future. It is pretty simple. If you do not think that white people are racist, you become more racist. It pairs perfectly with our counter-interpretation for anti-competitive debate. This debate breaks down pretty simply. 5 crackers are going to conclude that they want some internal link argument about limits, and then they're going to remember that we have an advantage that is conceded impact argument with anti-Blackness. We've tied that theory to topicality, so what you're essentially deciding is whether or not their model literally increases the chance of a state's counterplan. And then you're going to think, well, I usually conclude some style of switch side debate incorporates the aft discussion, and then you're going to remember that our theory that would circumvent our theory of power because it would bureaucratically abstract the positionality of the people debating towards bureaucracy, which is definitionally non-confrontation. Why do you think that a plan is a necessary prerequisite to discussing Black women? I am not asking you. I'm asking you to ask yourself. And when you do, you'll have no choice but to vote affirmative, because you are now conducting the internal reflection that we have called you to do via our method of non-escape. An easy way to understand our offense is, why did everybody cringe when they saw this panel? Why did it make sense for Dartmouth to flip negative to go for an argument about predictability? It's because you are expected to value their arguments. We have conceded judge instruction, and they're getting fucking cranked because the empathy good card that you usually conclude zaps all of our offense is both cleaning up solvency. You know, subjectivity shift is possible. You know, exposing yourself to your own anti-blackness and conducting empathetic relationality with Black people reduces your likelihood to hate Black people. And we are internally turning their model as essentially worse for empathy. When Kevin is like, how do you know the topic was elected democratically? That is a beautiful line that is conceded by the tutor, which you can see within the fact that I wrote the climate paper, which demonstrates that I don't give a fuck about any of this antitrust shit, and that it was not consensual or agreed to. Just because there are procedures in debate does not mean that the procedures are what is relevant or should determine the content of the debate. Even though you might conceptualize tea as something completely different, you need to keep in mind that we should model our procedures in reaction to how debate interacts with the real world. You would never enforce handball against a kid because it's an arbitrary deployment of the rules for the rule's sake with no recognition of the social context. And their offense is more of the same. Clash turn, content agnostic debate develops into the traditional association for general intelligence. The idea that clashing over the domain of the resolution is good because it gets the content introduced in any domain of knowledge, regardless of the content introduced, is the same logic that is used to demonize critical theorists that are not rigorous enough to funnel millions of dollars to domain agnostic STEM programs and IQ tests that are then retroactively used to pathologize vibe folks. This is the unsaid assumption of the topicality interpretation that we should see these debates as inherently valuable because of the fact that they're situated within a predictable set of procedures, regardless of what we're debating about, that we should interpret debate as a skill sharpening activity, regardless of the content of the topic. In fact, this classic line that it doesn't matter what the resolution was, just that it was predictable and limited, would see no issue with abominations of topics like USFT repeal the 13th Amendment or USFT cut the welfare state. The negative assertion that these topics are not controversial or will never be selected should be probed with incredible skepticism. Why do you think that there's a difference between those topics and this ones? Why do you think it is so obvious that antitrust is so much better of a controversy? It is not different than any of these other ones that have come before to exclude discussions of racial violence. Think about it like this. Do you really think that critical teams wouldn't affirm the resolution if the underlying agent wasn't the USFT? They falsely assume that the neutrality of the agent and the object of the topic are Jones evidence that these kinds of policy relevant debates are not content neutral, but situated within the assumption that the debates that we have or should be having are the ones that it can be incorporated within a broader bureaucratic institution. It is a form of racial violence that the 1C impacts out as a constant white deferral strategy over social issues. You should realize is that what Dartmouth wants to debate is not our app. What they want to debate is what they think our app is. At no point in this debate have they described how exactly a debate over the content of our 1C will go down within the context of the resolution, unless you can describe how debates with Tarife with a plan would shake out in a way that would capture our offense. So you should be hesitant to conclude Adolf states and advantage counterpoint debates would force a non-black confrontation with our theory of desire. The responses were nonsense. They demonstrated our internal link argument when they answered, your model justifies IQ tests with exclusion inevitable. No, folks, once again, a switch side debate does not solve our offense. The stasis of the debate would still be the resolution. So every F would just perm, or we'd read reverse framework, which devolves back into the question in this debate. Competition does not vaporize our offense. The ultimate test case is whether you'd like to have friends or competitors. The negative falsely interprets that the implication of speech time imbalance is that they exist to serve competition, rather that competition serves the interests of the community. We have created these rules and norms for the interest for getting closer to one another. So any terminal impact that Dartmouth goes for must be explained in terms of the community building nature of this activity, since that's the only intuitive benefit of the debate. The only other stuff that I have to clean up is that you can only rationalize the exclusion of content if you have the subjective capacity to decide that content is irrelevant. They say we are ignoring the line by line, which presumes that arguments are evaluated fairly. In the first place, debates are not adjudicated fairly. Everybody thinks that this is a negative panel, but they have proven their theoretical abstraction to be like, oh, USC is just like us because we're obviously not the same. They say racial cartels would lose on the instant 5-0. The counter plan that is right would obviously solve the critique to those DAs. The debate then becomes about the plan, not the theory. If you were to put a plan on this app, how would that solve our offense? If you're not racist, this is 5-0. They dropped empathy good. Internal link turns all their stuff. Subjectivity shift, and we're just cranking them in this debate. Your season finals.
Debate.
Debate.
I wasn't the last in, but I just refreshed and pulled it up. It looks like everyone's here. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if the director announces these or we do, or wasn't sure what people do.
I think it's just us, Coach. Okay. Do you want it, or are you trying to do that? Okay. Congratulations to both teams for an extremely close debate. The decision is a 3-2 for the negative from Dartmouth. USC, how are we feeling? What do you all want to hear, USC?
Pretty much. I only care who sat, and then I'm gonna type my Venmo in the chat so people can buy me drinks. So, who sat? Gidley and Harry. Oh, KU West, baby. Let's fucking go. All right, Dartmouth. Good luck in the finals. Thank you to everybody. If I have questions, I'll email, but good shit. Good luck. Nigga, you go with COVID in the finals. Virgo. I'm like, nigga. All right. I'm out. The end.
Great debate. Thank you all.
Thank you all.